really fear is inside yourself. You fear your own power. You fear your anger, the drive to do great, terrible things. Now, you must journey inwards. You are ready. Breathe.
The world can be a scary place. Sure, it's not all bad. There's a lot of good here if you know where to look. But where there is light, there are also shadows. And within those shadows lurk any number of things to be afraid of. Some of them are obvious: war, disease, social upheaval, the basic fact of our own mortality. But others are more subtle. The fear of failure, of not measuring up, of being passed over or simply abandoned. Fear is ubiquitous. It can find you anywhere. You can try to run from it, but sooner or later, it will run into you. Some of you know this. You've encountered it firsthand. For you, fear isn't just some anomalous event in an otherwise pleasant life. It's a constant companion, the ever-present devil on your shoulder telling you not what you should do, but what you can't. If you let it, fear will consume you. It will box you in and lock you out from experiencing a life with even the slightest shred of meaning. It will drive you deep into hiding and hound every one of your steps until you're left cowering in whatever hole you've managed to crawl into. And worst of all, fear will keep you there. That's the really scary part. The awful truth that ought to have you quaking in your boots. Every second you give into fear is a second you give away. If left unchecked, those seconds turn to minutes, which turn to hours, which turn to days and months and years. Fear won't just take your breath away. It will take your life, and keep it if you don't learn how to face it. So the next logical question is how? How do you go about confronting your fears? Common wisdom would tell you that fear is something you need to conquer, that it's a monster to be slayed. We believe that fear is a disease or defect. It's something to be cured of. And considering everything I've just told you, that would seem to be the right conclusion. But the truth is, it's not. Fear isn't something you snuff out. It's something you manage, something you work with. Very rarely does fear go away entirely. If it does, that's probably an indicator that you weren't doing something all that scary to begin with. Despite the very bleak picture I've intentionally painted for you, fear itself isn't your enemy. In fact, its first job is to help you. It's your body's way of saying, look out. This thing you're walking into, it might hurt you, or worse. Can it be wrong in its assessment of the situation? Absolutely. Can it assign danger to things that aren't dangerous at all? Identify monsters that don't exist? It can and does so routinely. But that's precisely why fear needs to be managed. It's not infallible. You have to check its work. Fear is just an advisor, and it's your job to scrutinize the advice it gives you. Remember, fear isn't the only tool in your toolkit. You also have a brain. A rational mind which can cut through the noise, pull away irrelevancies, and lay bare the truth. Your mind is powerful. So powerful, in fact, that it can even override what you feel. So if you want to get a handle on your fear, that work begins with the mind. To begin teaching you how to use your mind to manage fear, we need to start from first principles. When you're scared, the proper response is not to run and hide, but to stop and think. What has you spooked? Is there a genuine threat bearing down on you? Is your safety truly compromised? If so, yes, turn tail and get clear. But what if the source of your fear is something more intangible? Maybe you're afraid of failing or embarrassing yourself in some way. In this case, maybe the fear you're experiencing isn't bad at all. Perhaps it's an indicator that you're stretching yourself beyond your comfort zone. Maybe it's telling you that you're moving towards something meaningful or important. In which case, the right move isn't to run away, but to press in and keep going. By taking the time to properly examine your fear, you take the first and most important step toward addressing it. You begin to face it dead on. Instead of avoiding or ignoring it, you size it up. You can't run away from something you're inspecting. It simply isn't possible, and that's what we want. We want you to stand your ground and engage. Because it's when you're engaged that you'll begin managing the fear which for too long has been managing you. Once you've identified your fear, there are a few things you can do to get a handle on it. The first is to locate its source. When you take the time to determine why your fear exists, you accomplish two very important things. First, you create a kind of mental barrier between yourself and the fear you're analyzing. Instead of getting caught up in all the uncomfortable sensations produced by the fear, analysis provides you with the mental space to stand back and view it objectively. Second, analyzing your fear primes you for action. When you understand where your fear is coming from, a game plan emerges for how to begin addressing it. Every fear is unique and requires its own particular response. By acquiring the proper intel, you gain clarity on what that response is and how to implement it. When combined with the mental separation already discussed, objective analysis generates the necessary conditions for you to get aggressive and start making productive moves. Those moves can take several forms and, as I've said, will depend largely upon the specific fear you're experiencing. To get you pointed in the right direction, I'll cover a few examples here. This list isn't exhaustive, but it should help address some of the more common fears you're likely to encounter, and arm you with a few strategies for dealing with them. Let's assume that your fear emerges when you step outside your comfort zone. Maybe you're anxious in social settings, or afraid to take up a new hobby. Once you've identified the fear, take the next step by asking why it exists. Is your fear rooted in a deep aversion to rejection? Are you afraid to take on a new challenge because you might fail or even hurt yourself? With the root cause identified, a number of pathways become available to begin managing your fear. The first and most important of these is intentional exposure. Oftentimes, our fears are amplified by the assumptions we make about the world around us. When left uninformed by direct experience, our assumptions about the unknown can run wild and dramatically overplay the dangers posed by the things that scare us. To ensure that our assumptions aren't running around unchecked, we need to counterbalance these assumptions with real-world data. The best way to collect this data is through intentional exposure to the spaces or activities we deem threatening. So if your assumptions have interpreted social settings as threatening, you'll want to calibrate those assumptions by exposing yourself to places where people tend to congregate and socialize. If taking up a martial art has you worried, enrolling in a trial class or scheduling a one-on-one session with the instructor can help get you the experiential data you need to begin challenging your assumptions. The key is to do all this gradually. Jumping in head first can be an effective strategy for some. But if the fear you're experiencing is crippling, you'll need to ease off the gas and gain exposure in a more deliberate way. The goal here isn't to melt your face off, but to bring you into contact with the way things truly are. If you need to take your truth in measured doses, that's okay. This isn't a race. It's a process. When you take the time to allow experience to challenge your preconceptions, you'll often find that the boogeyman conjured up by your untested assumptions begins to fade, and a more sober assessment of the situation comes into view. You begin to see that what you feared wasn't the thing itself, but the false caricature you created with your own mind. By exposing your fear to the light of truth, it begins to diminish, granting you the freedom to engage in, and perhaps even enjoy, the activities which once seemed so threatening. One other strategy you can employ to address a fear of the unknown is to reframe your thoughts about what you're experiencing. Often, our default response is to label fear with negative connotations. We do this because fear is uncomfortable. But discomfort is a poor metric for determining whether something is bad or good. For example, exercise is certainly uncomfortable, but no one in their right mind would conclude that it is therefore bad. That's because there's more to the equation than mere discomfort. Exercise entails a host of benefits which simply outweigh the mere fact that it's uncomfortable. As it is with exercise, so can it also be with fear. The mere fact that fear is uncomfortable isn't enough to tell you whether it's good or bad. You have to look deeper. Contrary to what your feelings may be telling you, the things you truly want often lie just beyond what you fear. When you reach for the higher things in life, you're forced to become more than what you are. This invariably leads you into uncharted waters, and living within that space is necessarily uncomfortable. But it's a good discomfort. You're growing, you're changing, you're tearing down old barriers and stepping into new possibilities. You're forging a character and a destiny infused with meaning. You have a purpose, and you're taking real steps to pursue it. Who cares if stretching yourself a little doesn't always feel great? You're going somewhere. You're doing something. And it's all important. In fact, you should welcome the discomfort, because it's a signpost. It's pointing the way to the life you truly want, and to the person you know you can become. You just need the courage to stay the course, and to keep moving forward. To live a life of meaning and purpose requires courage. Courage to embrace discomfort and to face the unknown. Such courage isn't to be found by eradicating your fears. After all, where fear is absent, there can be no courage. Instead, true bravery is found in the simple will to act, to do what's right, what's healthy, what's genuinely good for you and those you care about, regardless of the circumstances. Courage is a decision. The determined choice to, for just once, prioritize your highest good above all else, even your feelings. When you do this, a new world will spread out before you. New pathways, new possibilities, new opportunities to become your authentic self will manifest in ways you couldn't expect. They're all waiting for you, just beyond your fear. If you can muster the will to move forward and take one courageous step, they'll appear. And with them, a better future. So don't wait a second longer. Confront what you fear and commit to moving beyond it. You can do this. You're stronger than you know. Stronger than the story in your head would have you dare to believe. But dare you must. For it's in the daring that the brave soul within you will finally be revealed.